Well, joining us now for more on this from New York City, our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. But let's begin by going to Europe and speaking to our senior diplomatic correspondent there, Christian Millard in Paris. And Christian, let me ask you, Vienna, really just surely the start of some process. I mean, what do you see? How do you see it playing out there, especially between, of course, the other signatories are there, but between the U.S. and Iran?
Well, definitely we will have many difficulties, many obstacles ahead, and it will be very difficult to expect a breakthrough in the very coming future. You remember when Reagan and Gorbachev were negotiating on nuclear disarmament, Reagan used to say, trust but verify. In the new context with Iran, between Iran and USA, I will say, especially verify, but don't trust too much. It's clear that to reach a global solution, two major challenges must be faced. How to reverse the sanctions imposed by Donald Trump, and especially how to bring back the Iranians to the strict respect of their initial obligation. That will be the toughest challenge. To make things move, I think the suggestion made recently by the Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, is probably the best one. The U.S. inspired themselves from this suggestion by Lavrov, saying when they decided to offer the lightening of the sanctions in return of stopping uranium enrichment, Iran refused. And tonight, the Iranian nuclear negotiator, Mr. Arakchi, says Iran rejects suspension of the 20% uranium enrichment in return of unfreezing 1 billion of Iranian assets, which means that the road ahead is very tough, and it gives us an idea about the difficulties we have to face ahead. No doubt about that.
Well, Mike, no doubt about that. On the Biden administration, as Christian said, it looks like it was offering some kind of appetizer there on the sanctions to get things going. But the Biden administration is also facing internal domestic pressure from, for example, Congress, and not just Republicans, from some prominent Democratic senators as well. It's going to be at least going to leave it very little room to maneuver there at Vienna.
Don't forget, coming into these talks, you know, the Biden administration was at least hinting, even though they wouldn't express it clearly, that they wanted, in return for re-entering the Iranian nuclear accord, to get more concessions from Iran about its terrorist activities in the region, about its ballistic missile program, which was not addressed fully enough in the original nuclear accord, that they wanted to expand it, make it longer and stronger, so to speak. That doesn't even appear to be on the table in these current negotiations. Iran is dictating the terms of the game, that all of the sanctions need to be removed. But what are we talking about here, Calev? We're not talking about just the sanctions from the original nuclear accord that were supposed to be unwound when Iran met all of its goals. We're talking about 1,500, 1,600 additional sanctions that the Trump administration layered on top of it, anywhere from human rights abuses to election interference. And they did it in such a way that some of these sanctions are legally intertwined with the JCPOA in a way that really makes it difficult to untangle, which was a clear strategy of the Trump administration. So there is a lot of technical work to be done going forward if either one of these sides really wants to re-engage truly at this point.
Right, and I just want to remind both of you, we have unconfirmed reports now this evening of a Iranian spy ship in the Red Sea getting hit by some kind of missile. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at if the incident is correct, the reporting is correct, a lot of people are going to be looking at the timing of the incident. But I want to pick up on Mike's point to you, Christian, about it's not just the nuclear accord, the Iran's nuclear program that's under scrutiny here. It's also some of their other activities, their sponsorship of proxies like the Houthis in Yemen and the militias in Iraq, and also their ballistic missile program, the conventional missile program. France wants that addressed. Do you think that'll even come up at any point, or that will have to just be an entirely different track of negotiation?
You're talking to me?
Yes, Christian.
Oh, yeah. So I think it would be very difficult, Calev, to trust a regime which has been spent his time during the last 2 years to violate the agreement. Well, you alluded to it. We have the uranium enrichment and 20%, the production of uranium metal, the production of plutonium at the Iraq nuclear plant, and the refusal to discuss the ballistic program. We do know that when I hear the French and the Europeans say we have to move quick because in 2 months from now we have the presidential election, it's not going to change anything. I think we are gullible. All this bunch of people are the same. It's their ultra-radical, anti-US, anti-Israel, and you don't have too much to expect from these people. I would say when I hear the French Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Le Drian, saying, I quote, don't go, when he says to the Iranians, don't go on violating the agreement, which might stop any future dynamic to resume negotiations. I think we are very naive, very gullible. And I think even at the Congress, in the US Congress, people remember what happened 5 years ago when Obama was negotiating, 6 years ago when Obama was negotiating the nuclear deal with the same people as today, Mr. Malley, Mr. O'Sullivan, and it was Antony Blinken, the new Secretary of State. I think they have been charged with being too lenient, not enough to be not firm with the Iranians. And we hope these times they will be firm and they will be gullible as they have been 6 years ago when they dealt with the nuclear program with the Iranians.
Right, and certainly that's going to be the feeling in Israel as well. Christian Millard and Mike Wagenheim, thank you for joining us on The Rundown. And